Thank you for joining the JAF on Tech podcast series. And this is where we talk about technology, artificial intelligence, policy, and the implications of the ever-changing world of information security. If you can leave a comment, a like, or subscribe, it would mean the world to us, especially the humans.
All right, let's dive right in, shall we? Today's deep dive is all about something that's become absolutely crucial in today's business world: third-party security management.
Yeah, it's no longer a niche topic, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. How many vendors, partners, contractors, how many outside companies do you think your business relies on?
Oh, tons. I mean, probably more than most people even realize.
Exactly. It's a lot, right? And that interconnected world, as awesome as it is for efficiency and all it means, we really need to be paying attention to security.
We absolutely do. And you know what I think is so fascinating and kind of unnerving at the same time? How much third-party security has evolved.
Oh, tell me more about this.
It used to be seen as like just an IT problem, but now it's it's woven into everything, every single part of how organizations do business today.
It really is. It's like that game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but instead it's like, how many data handoffs until a potential breach?
Interesting way to think about it. Scary, but true.
Right. Not as fun a game, though, let me tell you. But to really get a grasp on this whole thing, I think we almost need to, like, rewind the clock a bit, right?
Okay.
Go back to the beginning.
Yeah, good idea. Let's do a little history lesson. So I think it all really took off with like the whole outsourcing boom back in the late 1900s.
Right. Everyone wanted to outsource.
Companies were obsessed with finding ways to streamline, cut costs, and, well, outsourcing seemed like the magic bullet.
Yeah, efficiency. It always sounds so good in those board meetings.
Exactly. But then the internet came along.
And everything changed.
Everything changed. Suddenly, companies weren't just sending off, tasks to be done. They were trusting vendors with their most valuable asset, their data.
All kinds of data.
Oh yeah, and not just any data. We're talking sensitive information, financial records, customer details, those crown jewels that you do not want to lose.
It's true. And it's like, with every new vendor a company starts working with, it's like they're adding another door to their castle.
I like that analogy.
Right. And it makes you wonder, are all those doors as secure as they should be?
That's a million-dollar question, isn't it? And the scary part is that if even one of those doors is left unguarded, the consequences can be, well, catastrophic.
Totally.
Think about the Card System Solutions breach back in 2005. Over 40 million credit card numbers were stolen.
Wow.
And you know what their downfall was? Outdated software. It was a simple vulnerability, really, but the impact, huge.
Oof, that's rough. It makes you think, what systems are companies using today that are woefully outdated that we don't even know about?
Right, it's a scary thought.
Kind of gives me chills.
And this is why we can't just rest on our laurels and assume, oh, well, we learned from the past, we're good now.
Yeah, wishful thinking.
Because things are changing constantly in the digital world. Just look at the Epsilon breach in 2011. A massive number of major companies were impacted by that one.
Okay, so not just those smaller companies that maybe hadn't quite caught up yet.
No, we're talking big names. So these were not small potato.
Okay, this is some serious wake-up calls. But even beyond those specific breaches, the whole landscape itself is like constantly shifting, isn't it? You've got cloud computing, GDPR, CCPA. I mean, it seems like the rules of the game are constantly in flux.
They absolutely are. And, cloud computing, for example, revolutionary, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's also made it even harder to track where all that data is actually going and who has access to it.
That is kind of terrifying when you really stop to think about it. I don't know, it's like sending a postcard, but sending it through a black hole.
A black hole, yeah.
You know it's out there somewhere, but who knows where it's going or who's reading it along the way.
Right, total mystery. And then you've got GDPR, CCPA. They're trying to wrangle all that data back in line.
Trying to restore some order to the Wild West.
Exactly.
It's true. So it's like we're living in this world where data is constantly flowing, like through all these different pipelines. And it feels like we're constantly playing catch up trying to secure it all.
Yeah, it can definitely feel that way. I think the key is to shift our mindset a little bit.
Okay, how so?
We can't think of third-party security as just another box to check on a compliance checklist,
I see, so it's got to be more proactive.
Exactly. It's got to be about creating a whole culture of security, like weaving it into every single layer of an organization.
Right, because it's not just about our own systems anymore. It's about making sure that everyone we work with, everyone we partner with, is just as security conscious as we are, right?
100%.
So I guess a good place to start is, Who's ultimately responsible for making sure this actually happens? Where does the buck stop?
Well, it starts at the top, right? Management, the leadership, they can't just delegate security and hope for the best.
Right, they actually have to walk the walk.
Exactly. They set the tone, they make those big decisions about which vendors to go with, and they have to start prioritizing security right up there with, functionality and budget.
Well, and let's face it, a cheap vendor who ends up exposing your data, that's going to cost you way more in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. And a PR nightmare, too. Let's not forget that.
Ooh, yeah, good point. Damage control after a breach is no joke.
Not at all. So yeah, management, they really need that big picture view, understanding that a security incident, even a small one, with one vendor, could set off this domino effect across the whole organization.
Totally. It's all connected.
But it's not all on their shoulders, of course. Let's talk about the people actually building these systems, the ones in the trenches, the engineers.
Code whisperers.
Exactly. They're the ones making sure those castle doors are actually secure and not just, held together with duct tape and hope.
Because we all know how well that works.
Right. So we're talking about things like secure coding practices, vulnerability assessments throughout the entire development lifecycle. Actually using those tools designed to find weaknesses before they become headlines,
Right, because all it takes is one weak link, one vulnerability in a third-party system to bring the whole house of cards down.
And it happens all the time. Think about that Target breach a while back.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Hackers got in through their HVAC vendor.
HVAC, of all things. Who would have thought?
Right. You never think of it, but that's the thing. It's those seemingly harmless connections that can open up huge vulnerabilities if they're not managed properly.
It's a good thing they have security researchers for that. Speaking of which, this is where our security analysts come in, right?
Exactly. Our digital detectives.
They've got their threat detecting goggles on.
Always. They're scanning the horizon, looking for trouble, They're the ones who live and breathe threat intelligence.
So they need to have a pretty deep understanding of the whole landscape then, huh?
Oh, for sure. They need to understand the vendor landscape, the latest attack vectors, emerging vulnerabilities. They're piecing together these clues, trying to anticipate threats before they even happen.
So they basically need a crystal ball and a supercomputer for a brain.
Pretty much. It's a tall order, but they're out there doing it every day.
Wow. Well, shout out to all the security analysts. It sounds like they're playing a seriously crucial role in keeping companies one step ahead of the bad guys.
They really are. They're constantly evolving security strategies, working hand in hand with engineers to make sure those incident response plans are rock solid. Because remember, it's not just about protecting your own systems, it's also about understanding how a breach at a vendor could impact you and having a plan to address that.
And this brings us to the people who make sure everyone's playing by the rules, that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, the auditors.
Ah, yes, the auditors.
The referees of the cybersecurity game, blowing the whistle on any, fouls and whatnot.
Exactly. Auditors, both internal and external, they're vital. They make sure that all this talk about security is actually happening in the real world.
Right, so it's not enough to just say, oh yeah, we're doing all the right things.
Nope, you got to prove it.
Show me the receipts.
Exactly. Are you following best practices? Are you meeting those regulatory standards? What about your contractual obligations with those third parties we talked about? They're checking it all.
So they're really thorough.
They have to be. It's a big job.
It really is. But, even with the best of intentions, even with all the plans and procedures in place, breaches can still happen, right? So let's talk about what happens when that metaphorical castle door swings open and someone's snooping around where they shouldn't be. It does feel like that, doesn't it? It's like that oh no moment when you realize you left the house without setting the alarm, like a little shiver of panic,
Yeah.
So when that breach happens, when someone does get in, what's the plan? What do we do?
You need an incident response plan, and not just any old plan either. We're talking a well-oiled machine ready to go, and that includes those third-party vendors we've been talking about.
Right, because if the breach originated with one of them, you can't exactly just wash your hands of it, right?
Nope. You better have their number on speed dial, and I don't mean their customer service line.
Definitely not.
Well,
you need the A-team on the other end of that line. So what needs to be in place beforehand?
So many things. You got to have predefined communication channels, escalation procedures. Everyone needs to know their role, who does what when. It can't be a guessing game in the heat of the moment.
It's like a fire drill, but for cyber attack.
Exactly. You don't wait for the fire to start figuring out who grabs the extinguisher.
Right. Practice makes perfect. or as close to perfect as you can get in those kind of high-pressure situations. But let's be real, even with all this talk about plans and procedures and all that, it can feel overwhelming, right?
It totally can.
Especially if you're a company that's just starting to really wrap their heads around this whole third-party security thing. So, for those listeners out there who are feeling maybe a little overwhelmed, what's one thing, one piece of advice that you'd give them? Where do they even start?
Honestly, start simple. Don't try to do everything at once, Pick one thing, just one, that we've talked about today. Maybe it's tightening up your vendor contracts. Maybe it's implementing multi-factor authentication, or even just having that initial what-if conversation about incident response. And just start there.
I love that. One step at a time.
You don't have to become a cybersecurity expert overnight. It's all about those small steps. Over time, those small changes add up, and they create a much stronger security posture overall.
It's a journey, not a sprint.
Exactly. And let's be real, the threat landscape is constantly changing, so we have to be constantly learning and adapting right along with it.
That's so true. Well, on that note, I think we've covered a ton of ground today. We really explored this whole world of third-party security. I mean, we went from its humble beginnings to the seriously complex challenges we're facing today.
And we talked about how important it is for everyone in an organization, from the top down, to be thinking about this stuff.
Right, because it's not just an IT issue anymore, it's everyone's responsibility.
100%. And it's really about recognizing that third-party security, it's not just some abstract concept. It's vital if you want your business to thrive.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. Think about your own organization. Think about the third parties you rely on, and ask yourself, what's one action you can take today? Right now, what's one step you can take to create a safer, more secure future for your business? Keep that question in mind as we sign off for today.
Stay curious, everyone, and stay safe out there.